Hello, hi friends, hello the world. Welcome to this webinar slash podcast episode. I've decided that I want to combine things so that I can reach and also share my message with as many people as possible. So not only people who've come here and want to connect with me through webinars, but also in general to all podcast listeners or anyone who is listening or watching me. I want to make this available. And I will also try to make it as short as possible and as tangible as possible. That's the goal. And also I want to make it, I guess, very practical so that you can start applying things immediately once you finish this webinar. So thank you so much for everyone who's interested in this webinar. The topic that I want to talk about is identity and transitioning. And the reason why, of course, that I have decided to talk about it, because oftentimes we have many humanitarians, including myself, we have taken the identity of being a humanitarian for a long time. And we have taken up this identity without also realizing maybe so much of what is it that really what we want and how we want to, who we want to be and who we want to become. And I think we just had this passion for doing this amazing work, and therefore just in the process of it have developed a certain identity. And now we're asking questions of, okay, what can be my next identity if I'm no longer a humanitarian? Or even if within being a humanitarian, continue being a humanitarian, what other identities I can think of that would be good for me or that I want to have? And that's the question and topic that I want to address today. And of course, also share my experience of how that was. So the questions that I want to specifically focus on is, when is time to focus on identity and how to work on it? These are, I guess, the two topics or two questions that I mainly want to address it. So the first one is the topic of how or when is it time to look at our identities and see, is it really what we want? Is it really who we want to be, who we want to show up in the world this way or not? Is the question, right? So, and the answer that I would love to give is, these are the following instances in which case I suggest that you look at your identity and decide your self-concept of how you want to show up and how you're showing up currently. So the instances that I can think of that I want to count is the instances. The first one, obviously these are not chronological order, but I'm just to make it easier, right? I'm just saying the first one could be the inner battle that you're having with yourself is actually when it's time to look at your identity, I would say. And inner battles and inner dialogues and not dialogue, but inner debates could be in several different forms of, for instance, wanting to want one thing, but you are also drawn to doing something else, wanting to have certain stability and other things while also wanting something else, and somehow having this feeling that both don't really match within you or within your lifestyle. So you don't know which one to choose, as if you don't know which part of you listen to. So this inner battle, when it's happening, then it might be time to look at your identity. And we will, of course, discuss what is identity and what mistake we may be making in creating that identity. We'll talk about that. But I just want to start with where you are now and what might be the instances in which you want to look at your identity. So the second one that I would suggest is, if you always or mostly end up avoiding or suppressing things, And that's also when you need to look at your identity. So for instance, if you are always trying to adjust yourself or adapt yourself or being flexible the whole time, instead of really wanting to do what you really want or to express what you stand for, and if you're not doing it because of fear or because of other circumstances you think, then you want to look at your identity. The other one is very prevalent, including myself. I used to do that so much, and I'm trying not to do as much as I used to, which is pleasing others, right? And pleasing others looks like I rather do what others approve of me to do rather than what I really want to do. Right? It could be in so many different ways, like you are continuing working in the sphere where you are, even though you don't want to, but you want to continue doing it because that gives you a certain level of power or a certain level of reputation or a certain level of respect from other people that you love, and therefore you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to get their disapproval or whatever, and therefore you want to continue doing it. That would be pleasing others. And that's of course in a grand scheme, but it could also be very subtle things like doing it so that you can get some appraisal or you can get some approval or validation, right? When actually what we want is something else. And the other one that I really think that when it's time to look at the identity question is a time when we continue wanting to prove ourselves to others. I don't know about you, but I feel like most of my adult life I spent proving to others in one way or another, like wanting to be the person who has lots of money or wanting to be the person who has lots of this and that, and or even within work settings where I want to be seen as someone who does so much and so many things, or wants to get a great success so that everyone can say, oh, how great it is, right? So it's also pleasing, but also proving that I'm worthy of this treatment, or I'm worthy of this title or of this position. And if I don't prove it, then I don't feel like I'm worthy. Energy. And the other one that I would say where the identity topic might be very important to look at it which is when we are trying to compensate things. For instance, oftentimes we have this identity, or many of the humanitarians I know, including myself, I used to be, is the identity of suffering in order to get recognition, working 24 hours or wanting to do some heroic things so that I can get some recognition, and wanting to compensate for, so basically my worth somehow depends on those actions, on those things, or my enoughness or me not feeling guilty depends on those things. And therefore it could also be not compensation maybe, but more conditioning, like my feeling of worthy depends on those actions or on those successes, and I condition myself, right? So if I don't suffer enough, or if I don't do heroic things, then I'm not a humanitarian, or I'm not a good humanitarian, or whatever it is that we're thinking. That is when we want to check our identity. Now, having said this, what is identity? Obviously, is the question that many of us can think about, and also many of us probably have searched about it or listened to other topics or other experts about it, and we have, gathered some information of what it is really that we want. And also, I often thought for myself that I should have had a perfect identity from childhood, or I should have had this identity from my parents who should have formed me into this amazing human being who knows everything, who has everything and all of this stuff, and why they didn't do it, or whatever it is. That I used to have all of those things. And then I realized one true thing, which is once we're adults, we actually get to create our own identity, including the ones that we already have. So when it comes to identity, there are a lot of things that we think that we have to choose, or we can be or either this or that, or we can do this or that. No, I find it that all of the history that we have, they help us build the identity of who we want to be now. And they don't need to create an obstacle for us becoming who we want to be. So I really suggest that whatever your story of the previous ones or before, don't let it be an obstacle of creating the identity that you want. I'm not also suggesting that you do it from the scratch. You can always build on what you have and then decide what's next. What's the identity that you really consciously want to choose? And it doesn't matter if you're listening to all these experts and then coming up with your own strategies, or you just listen to your own wisdom of how you want to show up in the world. Who do you want to be? What do you want your legacy to be? And if you answer those questions, I think you will already know what the answer is. So here, what I want to really say is that identity basically is a set of beliefs about yourself, set of opinions and beliefs about yourself, principles and values about yourself that you stand for. In other words, how you describe yourself to be the unique person you are, right? And if our identity is the set of beliefs about ourselves, our opinions about ourselves, our concept of ourselves, then obviously they can be formed one of two ways usually. One way is when we just show up in the world and then see this instance and see this circumstance or see this situations, and then based on this we just somehow form our identity without really consciously choosing them. And that happens for most of us, and that's fine. That's how we function in the world. We don't have to have a perfect chosen or developed identities, right? That's not the goal. The goal is, now that we're aware of it, what are we going to do about it, and how do we want to create an a show of ourselves, that who we truly are and who do we truly want to stand for. And that's the goal. And in order to do that, you can look at also, like, what is it that you really love about yourself, of who you are? And then what is it that you're not really fond of who you are? And then how do you want to replace those that you don't like with the ones that you like? And then show up that way. That could already be a simple thing, but very powerful thing for you to do. I will talk more about it in a minute, but I want to focus a bit on mistakes, or rather I should say difficulties that we encounter in creating our identities, because oftentimes I think identities are formed of environment or fears or attachment. And I really want to warn you and want you to bring your attention to how maybe you don't want to be doing things, because if you do things that way, then you may not really be liking yourself and wanting to fix yourself afterwards if you form your identity that way. So these are the things that I suggest you avoid doing if you can. So one of them is, as I said, creating your identity based on the environment, which means essentially is people think of us in this particular way, or people think of seeing us in particular way, and we just like their views of how we are, and then we just accommodate it, or we want to just adopt it. I'm not saying that you should ignore all of them, but I'm just saying that be careful that that's not the basis of your identity. In the other one that I see often which is identity created based on attachments or on fears. And for instance, identities are created based on fears of not losing a job, or not losing a stability, not losing a money, or conditioning ourselves that we have this identity only if we have this much success, or this much money, or this work. Or oftentimes we like take over the identity of the work, and then we just don't really function, or don't really know how to function without that work identity, right? So I want to warn that let's not let's not ask what we do to define who we are, is essentially what I'm saying, right? So instead, let's decide who we want to be, irrespective of our jobs, or of our money, or of our whatever else we are doing. Irrespective of that, who do we want to be? And based on that, then decide how we want our work or our passion to enrich us. How do we want our relationship enrich us? How do we want our hobbies and other things enrich us? And then whatever happens to those things, we don't fall apart as such. Instead, we know who we are and what we stand for, no matter what happens to those things, right? So the analogy I'm thinking of is a relationship or a marriage. Oftentimes, I see often, from my culture at least, is that women at least have this identity of being a married women, mother in a particular community, and then once they divorce, for instance, it takes them so much suffering to go through, because they have identified themselves that person. And then now what do we do? Now in order to feel happy, so to say, we have to have an identity, or we have to be married, which is not true, right? So that's what I'm saying, that let's not let our activities decide or define our identity. Rather, we define our identity ourselves, irrespective of our activities. And then activities and all the things that we do and have, they enrich us. Okay. So having said that, I would love to suggest to you, if you permit me, I would love to suggest to you one identity that I think never fails in any circumstances, in any situation, that I have come to realize to be true, at least in my life and in life of many of my clients. And that identity can be created, and that's that I want you to also experience, which is the identity of a free, loving, trusting person. 3 words. 3 words of value, or whichever way you think of it, 3 ways of 3 fundamentals, maybe, that define you of who you are. And that then translates into all the things that we love doing, and that ensures that we no longer are attached to external things, no longer attached to having, I don't know, a success at a job, or having a success here or success there, but always having that success within us, which would be whenever I'm feeling free and making my choices out of that inner freedom, out of inner love for myself, out of that trust to myself. Whenever I make choices in life, I always get what I want, right? So the identity based on the value that is so valuable for you of who you want to be can help you in life, no matter what happens outside of you, so to say. right? So that's why that's the identity that I have been working towards, and being that person who always shows up out of inner freedom, shows up out of inner love, shows up out of trust in myself, which then easily projected to me trusting other people, me loving other people, me respecting their inner freedom, their choices in life, and then being in peace with myself, because I no longer need to debate about who do I want to be or where do I want to go. I just need to check with myself of, is it in line with who I am? Is it in line with my identity? Or if it's not, then what do I do? Right? So it becomes so much easier to orient myself, so much easier to have this inner compass to have, and then just make decisions and make choices. And it doesn't mean that, again, I will not be encountering difficulties, or I will not be encountering dilemmas or challenges. It just means that even though I encounter them, I will know what to do. I will know how to act, because I know what's true within me, right? What's true within me, how I want to show up irrespective of what's outside of me happening. So I no longer need to be depending on other people's opinion. And even if I do, I check with myself, is it in line with how I'm feeling within, how I'm showing up within myself, and then letting that exuberate and letting that come out to the external world. And in order to do that, the what to do's of this webinar, if anything you can take from it, I suggest that you focus on what is it that you want to, who you want to be and who you're being now, right? So basically 2 questions. And then whatever you don't like in who you are being now, how do you want to replace it with who you want to be? And these are all thoughts and beliefs about yourself that you want to cultivate to see, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to stand for. This is who I want to be known for, right? So with my freedom, with my love, and with my trust, I want to be known for the person who revolutionized cultures, office cultures, or conservative cultures, to let people know that they have all the tools, all the powers within themselves to change, to make things happen the way they want to, and they just need to use those powers in whatever the cause they're fighting for. That's the person I want to become by being the person who I'm preaching to be. So this is really it. So the 2 questions you can ask is, the easiest one is, who you're being now and who do you want to be? Whatever your answers are, that will enough define what is your identity, what is that inner compass that helps you, guide you in whatever situation you are, and makes you feel content because you're acting in line with what you deeply want, and you live it. So my dears, I think I have covered everything of what I wanted to do. Essentially, the identity topic is always, who do I want to be? Who am I not being now? And decide what to do. That's it. And I hope that you will take your time to reflect on it, and also don't think that it's going to be a long time or you have to work on it for a long time or anything like that. You can also decide here and now, this is how I want to be, this is how I want to show up, and start doing that. in showing that inner amazingness to the outside by deciding how your identity is going to be if it's not the way you want it now. So, my dears, I am so grateful for you taking time, for you being with me, for you being interested in this topic, and making just simple steps to get to where you want to be. And of course, if you need any help, you let me know. I'm always reachable. Until then, I wish you an amazing weekend, and I'll see you probably next week. Thank you. Bye.